Miss Lin, your jade thumb ring has been authenticated as a Ming Dynasty imperial treasure, with a conservative appraisal value of 80 million. The auctioneer adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses, barely containing his excitement. I stared at the jade thumb ring in the glass display case, my fingertips turning cold. This is it. In my previous life, wearing this ancestral thumb ring, I froze to death in an air raid shelter during the extreme cold apocalypse, before dying, my best friend Song Yuro. With a sweet smile, stripped off my down jacket and said, "Since you're going to die anyway, why not leave the supplies to me and Mingxian?" And now, I have been reborn. I've returned to 3 months before the apocalypse arrived, back to when this thumb ring hadn't yet been swindled away by Zhao Mingxian. Miss Lin, the auctioneer looked at me in confusion. I snapped back to attention, a cold smile curling at the corner of my lips. "Manager Wang, are you certain this is genuine?" His expression froze. I directly picked up the thumb ring and, under the watchful eyes of everyone, pressed my fingertip firmly on a specific part of the jade pattern. Click. Inside the ring, an extremely fine crack appeared. The entire room erupted in uproar. This can't be. The auctioneer's face turned deathly pale. I slowly raised the thumb ring to the light. Ming Dynasty Imperial Jade would never use such shoddy glue repair techniques. Your auction house is trying to pass off counterfeits to clients. In my past life, Zhao Mingxian had used the excuse of helping with appraisal to swindle this thumb ring from me here, only to sell it for 80 million to stockpile goods. But now, I'm going to make these bloodsuckers pay. Miss Lin, this must be a misunderstanding. The auction house owner rushed over, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. I sneered. According to Article 56 of the auction law, fraudulent acts require compensation of 3 times the deposit. The phone screen lit up, with live stream comments flooding the screen. "Holy shit, exposing a fake antique auction live. This girl is so badass. That crack was definitely artificially aged just now." I smiled slightly at the camera. "Thank you all for witnessing this. I'll be live streaming the entire rights protection process." The auction house owner's legs went weak, nearly making him kneel. Half an hour later, I walked out of the auction house with triple the compensation. The sunlight was dazzling as I rubbed the real jade thumb ring, which I had kept hidden in my inner pocket all along. The one in the display case was merely a high-quality replica. Suddenly, a sharp pain pricked my fingertip, a bead of blood seeped into the jade, and the ring began to grow faintly warm. Before my eyes, a scene abruptly materialized. A space shrouded in gray mist with a bronze cauldron standing at its center. Its surface covered in strange inscriptions. "Space binding successful." A cold voice echoed in my mind. My heart raced. There's a space inside the jade thumb ring. In their past lives, what Zhao Mingxian and Song Yuro were desperately trying to seize was actually this. Returning home, I locked the door and immersed my consciousness into the space. A gray mist enveloped an area of approximately 1,000 square meters, with text appearing on the central bronze cauldron. Current space, 1,000 square meters. Upgrade requires absorbing gold, 0/100 kg. I gasped for breath. In the apocalypse, supplies are the scarcest, but with this space, my phone suddenly vibrated with a text from Zhao Mingxian. "Cici, have you completed the transfer procedures for the villa left by your uncle? Yuro said she wants to be our bridesmaid." I stared at this text message, identical to the one from my past life, and sneered. In my previous life, I foolishly believed their lies and transferred the villa to Zhao Mingxuan's name. But on the 3rd day of the apocalypse, he kicked me out of the house. This time, I'll make them pay in blood. The next day, I went straight to the bank. "I want to mortgage my villa for a loan of 200 million. The account manager was stunned. "Miss Lin, this villa is only worth about 150 million on the market." I pulled out the internal document from the Geological Bureau on my phone. "In 3 months, this area will become a national key development zone, and land prices will at least triple." Of course, it was fake, but in my previous life, Zhao Mingxian used this trick to deceive countless people, and now it was my turn. While the manager was half convinced, I deliberately let the ring flash a gleam of light under the lamp. His gaze instantly became dazed, and he signed without hesitation. I raised an eyebrow. "So the thumb ring also has the effect of bewitching people." Leaving the bank, I dialed a number. "Is this the recycling center?" I'd like to order 100 large water storage tanks to be delivered to the suburban warehouse tomorrow. The first disaster of the apocalypse is a 40-day-long torrential downpour. When that happens, the city's water supply will be cut off, and the price of bottled water could skyrocket to 10,000 yuan per bottle. But right now, my space can store an entire reservoir's worth of water. Hanging up the phone, I looked up at the overcast sky and chuckled lightly. The game has begun. Lin Shi, are you out of your mind? Uncle Lin Ziyuan kicked open the door to my office, his face livid as he slammed a stack of documents onto the table. I took a slow sip of coffee, my gaze sweeping over the bright red thumbprint on the mortgage contract, evidence left behind when he secretly transferred my parents' inheritance years ago. Uncle seemed so agitated. Afraid I'll uncover the truth about that accident 3 years ago, my fingers lightly tapped the desk as the surveillance camera subtly adjusted its angle. His expression twisted instantly. In my past life, it wasn't until freezing to death that I learned from Song Yuro's gloating. My parents' archaeological accident was actually Uncle's meticulously planned murder. And now, my phone is broadcasting this family confrontation live to the entire internet. The barrage is scrolling wildly. Holy crap, a rich family drama. This uncle's sweating forehead looks so suspicious. The girl's gaze is killing me. Lin Ziyuan suddenly grabbed a teacup and hurled it at the camera. Anticipating this, I sidestepped, and a glint of light flashed from the ring hidden in my sleeve. Crash! The teacup, which should have hit the equipment, mysteriously changed course and splashed him with scalding tea instead. The jade thumb ring's interference capability was stronger than imagined. I seized the moment to flash my phone screen. Dear netizens, this is the transaction record showing my uncle embezzling 230 million from the foundation, just enough to cover the penalty for mortgaging my villa. The live stream viewership instantly surpassed 1 million. 3 hours later, I was sitting in the bank's VIP room counting my assets. Miss Lin, your uncle just urgently liquidated all his stocks, the manager said, wiping sweat as he handed over the black card, including the mortgage funds. A total of 280 million has been transferred to your account. I caught a glimpse of a notification on my phone. Hashtag Lin Group stock price plummets. Hashtag archaeologist's death investigation reopened. Hashtag. A WeChat message from Song Yuro suddenly popped up. CC. Mingxian says we're celebrating your birthday tonight at Jade Pavilion. Attached was a photo of their intertwined fingers, with the backdrop of my parents' favorite restaurant when they were alive. On this day in my past life, they conspired to drug me and swindled the keys to the villa. I replied with a cold laugh. Sure, remember to order the signature pufferfish. That restaurant uses the highly toxic blue-ringed octopus. 23 days before the storm, I walked into the International Jewelry City wearing a baseball cap. Gold prices plummeted by 30% due to the sudden outbreak of war, and the counters were crowded with middle-aged women selling off their gold. The purity of these gold bars isn't up to standard. I deliberately raised my voice, my fingertip lightly brushing the inner side of the signet ring. The teller's face suddenly changed. How did you know? Before the words were out, the alarm suddenly shrieked. The signet ring triggered the metal detector while absorbing the gold. As the security guards rushed over, I knocked over the fire hydrant. The high-pressure water jet swept across the hall, sending the crowd screaming and scattering. The torrent blasted open a hidden door in the corner, revealing a long-sealed vault from the Republican era. That's our boss's private stash, the clerk shrieked, trying to block the way. Seizing the moment, I pressed my hand against the stacks of gold bricks. The inscriptions on the bronze cauldron began updating frenetically. Gold plus 27 kilograms, space upgraded to 2000, function unlocked. Spirit Spring, 500 milliliters daily. Amid the chaos, a golden-laid jade pendant rolled to my feet, engraved with the same star chart as the bronze cauldron. Late at night, I stood in the suburban warehouse inspecting the supplies. 500 tons of mineral water and 3,000 boxes of compressed biscuits were neatly stacked in the space. The Spirit Spring pool shimmered with a faint blue glow, and drinking from it could even heal the frostbite from a past life. The injured joints no longer hurt. The phone suddenly lit up with an unfamiliar number. If you want the 12 jade pendants your parents left before they died, come to 34 Old Town Lane. The surveillance footage popped up simultaneously, showing Song Yuro smearing a transparent liquid on the handle of my villa's door. The streetlight revealed the half-exposed syringe in her bag. I tilted my head back and drank the spirit spring water, my bones crackling like popping beans, so eager to die. 18 days before the storm. The weather forecast still read, clear skies for the next week. I stood in the port's container area, rain dripping from the brim of my raincoat. The weather forecast is fake. This storm will last 40 days, until 2/3 of the city is submerged. Miss, you can't just look at these goods. The security guard stopped me, his flashlight beam sweeping across my face. I flashed a forged cargo manifest, Area B, Box 17. Customs inspection, in my past life. Song Yuro's brother worked here as a warehouse manager. Drunk, he once boasted that the port had smuggled frozen meat and medical equipment. Now, all of it belongs to me. As the container's iron door swung open, a blast of cold air mixed with the stench of blood hit me. Whole boxes of Australian Wagyu beef, vacuum sealed with yesterday's date printed on the packaging. My fingertips brushed over the frozen meat, and in an instant, the entire stock was stored in my spatial inventory. The markings on the bronze cauldron faintly rose, while a new frozen section materialized beside the spirit spring pool. Suddenly, the sound of an iron rod being dragged across the ground came from behind me. Little girl, now that you've checked the goods, it's time to pay the management fee, said one of the 3 tattooed men blocking the exit. Leading them was the scar-faced man who had robbed me of my supplies in my past life. I lowered my head, pretending to rummage through my bag while actually gripping the ring. As the scar-faced man swung his iron rod toward the back of my head, I spun around and splashed the spirit spring water onto his face. Ah, my eyes! He covered his face and howled in pain. Blue spiderweb-like patterns surfacing beneath his skin. The spirit spring water was actually corrosive to ordinary people. In the brief moment the other two were stunned. I grabbed a piece of frozen meat and hurled it at the alarm. Woo! The all-port alarm blared as guards' running footsteps echoed through the torrential rain. The tattooed men cursed and fled, giving me the chance to dash toward the container labeled medical use. When the hydraulic cutter pried open the container door, my breath caught. The entire container was filled with unopened ECMO, artificial lung, units, enough to equip an entire ICU. In his previous life, a single unit was scalped for 9 million on the black market. And Zhao Mingxian made his fortune by reselling these. Suddenly, the sound of a bullet being chambered came from behind. Hands up, a deep male voice carried the scent of blood. The moment I turned around, my pupils constricted violently. The man in camouflage had a bullet hole in his right shoulder bleeding profusely, yet his left hand held the gun as steady as a rock. At his feet lay the scar-faced man who had fled earlier, his throat cleanly slit. Lu Chen, in his past life. He was the military's strongest combatant, who later died fighting a horde of 100 zombies alone to protect a refugee camp. Are you here for the smuggled goods too? His gun barrel remained perfectly steady. The torrential rain hammered against the shipping container like war drums. Slowly, I raised my left hand, revealing the faint silhouette of a bronze cauldron materializing on my thumb ring. I'm here to save you, Captain Liu, I said, staring into his gradually dilating pupils. You've been hit by a 7.62mm steel core round. Without treatment, it'll pierce your lung. His eyes flashed with alertness, clearly shocked that I knew the bullet's caliber. You'll go into hemorrhagic shock in 3 seconds, I counted down while tearing open the first aid kit. Let me bandage you if you want to live. When the thunder exploded, he collapsed to the ground. At 3 a.m., I dragged the unconscious Lu Qin into an abandoned cold storage. The spring water mixed with hemostatic powder sizzled like a branding iron when poured on the wound. His muscles tensed but he didn't wake, his eyelashes casting sharp shadows under the cold white lights of the storage room. The phone suddenly vibrated. Song Yuro sending 3 voice messages in a row. Cici, where are you? Mingxian Gage prepared a birthday surprise for you. There was just a shootout at the harbor, so scary, you mustn't go near there. The last background sound had the beeping of an ECMO starting up. They were indeed tracking this batch of medical equipment. I replied with a cold laugh. Thanks for your concern. See you tomorrow at Jade Pavilion without fail. Outside the window, the rainstorm suddenly intensified, and the first wave of floodwater breached the port's embankment. 15 days before the rainstorm, Lu Chen's high fever finally subsided. In the abandoned cold storage, He suddenly opened his eyes, pressing a military dagger against my throat with a swift motion. "Who the hell are you?" His voice was hoarse, and the bandage over his gunshot wound oozed a faint blue hue, a sign of the spirit spring purging the toxins. I slowly raised the tablet, its screen displaying a military encrypted document. 7. 62mm steel core bullet allocation list. Someone who can help you track down the assassin. I tapped open a page, revealing the unmistakable signature of Uncle Zhao Mingxian. The batch of smuggled medicine you intercepted was originally destined for Zhao family's private hospital. Lu Chen's expression changed. The heavy rain pounded on the tin roof with a deafening roar. I unpacked the newly bought satellite phone and handed it to Lu Chen, calling your old comrades to let them know you're safe. I deliberately avoided looking at the tracker hidden in his shoe sole. By the way, tell them the Zhao family has stored 30 tons of chlorine gas tanks in the southern suburbs warehouse. In the third week of this downpour in my past life, a chlorine gas leak from those tanks suffocated over 1,000 people to death. Lu Chen's finger hovered over the dial button, then suddenly grabbed my wrist. Your birthmark is glowing. The flame-shaped birthmark was indeed emitting an eerie red light, a warning from the thumb ring. Almost simultaneously, the freezer door was smashed open by a heavy truck. Amid the blinding headlights, Song Yuro's brother Song Jiming approached with a shotgun. "Miss Lin, the ECMO you stole is enough to get you 10 years in prison." Behind him stood over a dozen armed thugs, while in my space, Lu Chen lay unconscious. "Sentencing." I chuckled. "You're the one smuggling military-grade bullets in shipping containers. Shouldn't you be worried about yourselves?" Song Jiming's face abruptly changed. Clearly not expecting me to know about this, he lowered his gun to aim at my knee. "Hand over that thumb ring." Yuro said it can emit, he demanded. Before he could finish, Lu Chen lunged from the shadows behind me. The cold glint of a military dagger flashed, and 3 gun-holding fingers were severed clean at the root. Amid the chaos, I knocked over the chlorine gas tank valve. As the pale green gas gushed out, I pulled Lu Chen and jumped into the drainage ditch behind us. Song Jiming's heart-wrenching scream echoed. "That's corrosive nerve gas. Retreat now." In the foul sewage, Lu Chen suddenly gripped my chin, forcing me to look up. "You knew the chlorine tank would leak," he said, his eyes glinting dangerously. "You were using me to wipe out the Zhao family's forces." Moonlight seeps through the end of the drainage ditch, and I toss my hairpin into the flowing water. The eavesdropping device on the hairpin blinks with a red dot. Our conversation now being transmitted in real time to the Military Supervision Committee. "No," I whisper, "I'm saving the 1,074 civilians who will die from chlorine gas in the future." At 4 in the morning, we climb out of the sewer and stand in the back alley of Jewelry City. Lu Chen pried open the backup circuit manhole cover with a bayonet. The vault is on the underground second floor, requiring iris recognition. "Use this." I handed over Song Jiming's severed finger. "Fingerprints may fail, but the iris won't change." The moment the vault door opened, we both held our breath. In the bulletproof glass cabinet at the corner, 12 ancient jade-carved zodiac statues were quietly displayed, with a pure gold astrolabe at the center. The bronze tripod in my mind vibrated wildly. Dragon-patterned jade pendant detected. Spatial upgrade conditions met. Lu Chen suddenly pressed down on my shoulder. "Don't move." His fingertips brushed past the edge of the golden cabinet, where an almost transparent sensor wire glinted faintly. "Weight sensor. If triggered, the entire vault will descend into the underground security layer," he said, pulling out a multi-tool army knife. "Give me 30 seconds. I seized the moment to press my hand against the glass display case. The moment the ring grew hot, the entire cabinet of gold and jade vanished without a trace. Alarms blared throughout the building as new characters appeared on the bronze cauldron. Space expanded to 5,000. Unlocked. Simulation training ground. Can reproduce Lu Chen's combat memories. Lu Chen turned to look at me abruptly, his eyes filled with a shock I had never seen before. "Now do you believe I can help you?" I tossed the dragon-patterned jade pendant to him. "Wear it, and you'll see fragments of the next 7 days." Outside the window, the first ray of sunlight pierced through the dark clouds, with 14 days left until the storm. 10 days before the storm, the gilded invitation to Song Yuro's birthday banquet arrived at my doorstep. Jade Pavilion VIP private room, 7 p.m. sharp. Don't be late. beneath her signature was the imprint of her trademark peach-colored lips, while on the back, barely visible needle-scratched words read, "Bring the thumb ring in exchange for your parents' archaeological diary." I rubbed the invitation between my fingers and smirked coldly. In my past life, she used this exact trick to lure me into going alone on a stormy night, only to push me down the Jade Pavilion's scenic elevator shaft. Lu Chen was practicing his knife techniques in the spatial training ground, the cold glint of his military dagger flashing through the virtual zombie horde. I tossed him a bottle of spirit spring water. "Accompany me to a banquet of traps tonight." He caught the bottle, a drop of water slipping down his Adam's apple as he swallowed. "You knew I'd agree all along." The crystal chandelier in the Jade Pavilion's grand hall sparkled as brilliantly as ever. I deliberately arrived 10 minutes late, letting Song Yuro's miniature camera capture the image of me entering alone. She opened her arms to greet me, the snake tattoo on her neck faintly visible beneath the diamond necklace. "Mingxian specially ordered bluefin tuna for you." I stared at the teardrop mole beneath her right eyelid, where a miniature poison sac was hidden, the very thing that had tainted the red wine I drank in my past life. The moment the private room door closed, Lu Chen's voice suddenly whispered through the earpiece, "The chandelier's steel cables show signs of being cut." As Xiao Mingxian raised his glass, I accidentally knocked over Song Yuro's champagne, spilling it on her skirt. Her hand instinctively went to her teardrop mole. I swiftly grabbed her wrist and applied the pre-prepared pheromone solvent to her pulse point. "What are you doing?" She coquettishly withdrew her hand, unaware the solvent had already seeped into her skin. Suddenly, a dense fluttering sound came from outside the window. "What's that noise?" Xiao Mingxian frowned as he pulled open the curtains, only for the entire floor-to-ceiling window to be engulfed by a black tide the next second. The mutated termite swarm swept through the compartment like a hurricane, heading straight for Song Yuro, who was emitting pheromones. "Ah, get away!" She frantically slapped at her hair crawling with termites as soldier ants made off with her diamond necklace. I retreated to the corner, watching the person who had killed me in my past life being engulfed by the insect tide. Xiao Mingxian tried to flee, but I tripped him, sending him crashing into the densest part of the termite swarm. He screamed and tried to grab me to shield himself, but I sidestepped, and his entire face plunged into the perfume-scented collar of Song Yuro's dress. "Help, Lin Shi, you'll die a horrible death." Song Yuro's curses suddenly turned into muffled sobs. As a queen ant crawled into her mouth, the chandelier crashed down, but I had already rolled away in anticipation. The moment flames erupted, Lu Chen burst through the door, his military dagger deflecting the burning drapery above my head. As the fire alarm blared through the building, we stood in the emergency stairwell, looking down at the chaos in the lobby. "You've been planning to kill them with the insect plague all along," Lu Chen stated as a fact rather than a question. I looked at the amber-like humanoid figure being carried out on a stretcher, Song Yuro encased in formic acid like a sculpture, her right hand still reaching out towards me. The Chanel brooch on her chest emitted an eerie glow. "This is just the beginning." I pressed my phone, and suddenly all screens in the Jade Pavilion started playing footage of Song Jiming trafficking military bullets. "The Zhao family owes a debt, and it's time to pay." The sudden intensification of the rainstorm caused the floodwaters to breach the underground wine cellar of the Jade Pavilion, mixing 30-year-old poisoned wine into the city's drainage system. In the late-night temporary hideout, Lu Chen used a military dagger to pry open the Chanel brooch. A micro-hard drive. He frowned at the ejected chip. I inserted it into the tablet, and the screen filled with the secret transaction records between Zhao Corporation and the military. The last document made Lu Chen's pupils contract sharply. Approval for Siren weather weapon experiment, issued by Xiao Mingxuan's father. "So this rainstorm," Lu Chen's voice tightened, "it's man-made disaster." I pulled up the ancient flood control map just unlocked in my space. "But we can turn it into a tsunami to bury the Zhao family." Outside the window, thunder tore through the night sky. 7 more days of torrential rain remained. On the 7th day of the downpour, the entire city had become an ocean. Standing atop the newly built watchtower in my space, I watched the floodwaters collapse the headquarters building of the Zhao Corporation. Lu Chen adjusted the newly assembled signal interceptor and suddenly frowned. "Xiao Mingxian is still alive." On the screen, a drenched figure was desperately swimming toward the direction of my villa, the same mansion where he had locked me in the attic to die in our previous life. now requisitioned by the military as a temporary command center. Of course he would go there. I gently stroked the frost forming on my thumb ring. After all, I accidentally leaked the news that there's a nuclear-grade bunker beneath the villa. By the time Zhao Mingxian clung to the villa's ornate iron gate, his lips had turned purple from the cold. She, I know I was wrong. He frantically pressed the doorbell, his Patek Philippe watch already waterlogged and stopped from the storm. The downpour was terrifying. For the sake of our 3 years together, I watched his performance through military-grade surveillance and casually dialed the military hotline, reporting, a fugitive suspect from Zhao Corporation has been spotted. As the armed helicopter circled overhead, I pressed the remote control. The villa's gates slowly opened, but Zhao Mingxuan's ecstatic expression froze when he saw what was inside. 12 automated machine guns rose from the entrance hall, their infrared dots densely locking onto his entire body. Lin Shi, you'll die a horrible death. Zhao Mingxian suddenly snarled as military personnel pinned him to the ground. But you'll never find your parents' final diary page. He tore open his shirt, revealing a waterproof bag strapped to his chest, inside which yellowed paper pages were faintly visible. My pupils constricted violently. That diary page recorded the burial coordinates of the 12 ancient jades. Do you want it? He mimicked my tone. Then get on your knees and beg me. The attack helicopter suddenly sounded an alarm, detecting rapid temperature drop. Repeat, the cold wave is arriving ahead of schedule. The temperature plummeted to minus 40 degrees Celsius within 10 minutes. Military personnel evacuated urgently. And Zhao Mingxian seized the opportunity to break free from his handcuffs and lunge toward the helicopter's landing gear. Trying to escape, I activated the villa's defense system, and a swarm of drones roared out. They didn't attack, but instead circled Zhao Mingxian, continuously scattering some kind of glittering powder. The moment the powder touched water, it froze into ice, turning every step of his escape into a slippery path straight to hell. What is this? He fell onto the icy surface, staring in horror at his gradually freezing hands. Nano-level condensate, I broadcast via the drone, developed in your father's lab, originally intended for polar weaponry. As Zhao Mingxian froze into an ice sculpture, I maneuvered the drone to retrieve the waterproof bag. The last page of the diary read, beneath the Kunlun ruins, the 12 Jade Demon Sealing Array has loosened. Must act before the Jiazi year. The latter half was smeared with blood. Lu Chen suddenly gripped my shoulder. Look outside the window. The frost patterns on the glass were eerily forming constellations, perfectly matching the star map inside the thumb ring. Even more terrifying, Zhao Mingxuan's ice sculpture was faintly glowing. A phantom image of the dragon-patterned jade pendant emerged from his chest. Late at night, we broke through the ice and returned to the base. The cold wave isn't a natural phenomenon. Lu Chen pulled up the satellite cloud images. The cold source originates from the Zhao Corporation's weather station in the Arctic. I stared at the newly added polar equipment zone in the space, where 12 sets of cold-resistant suits lay quietly. Each suit had a jade pendant-shaped indentation over the heart area. Prepare the sled. I polished the dragon-patterned jade pendant. It's time to meet this so-called Frost King. Outside, the blizzard carried a howling wind like the cry of wolves, as if heralding the awakening of some ancient behemoth. On the third day of extreme cold, the thermometer showed minus 52 degrees. Bundled in my cold-resistant suit, I stood outside the frozen Zhao Corporation weather station, my exhaled breath instantly freezing into ice crystals. Lu Chen used a military dagger to pry open the frozen alloy door, then suddenly turned and pushed me down. Bang! Bullets whizzed past our helmets, exploding against the ice walls and leaving spiderweb-like cracks. Private forces of the Zhao family, Lu Chen whispered, his right hand trembling instinctively, a lingering injury from his past life in the military camp. I handed him the Spirit Spring concentrate. The sniper at 10 o'clock is yours. I'll go activate the EMP. The interior of the weather station resembled an ice sculpture maze, countless display screens frozen at the moment the cold wave struck. I dodged the patrol and attached the EMP device to the main control panel. As the countdown began, I heard the sound of a bullet being chambered behind me. Miss Lin, the man in white camouflage pressed his gun against my back. The family head said you'd come to steal the siren control chip. Pretending to be frightened, I stepped back deliberately, letting my heel bump against the temperature valve. Click, the heating system suddenly erupted. and icicles from the ceiling rained down like a storm. Seizing the moment as the guards dodged, I lunged for the control console. In the blue flash of the EMP burst, all electronic devices instantly shut down, including the communicators in the guard's ears. "Are you insane?" He struggled to his feet. "Without the climate control, this place will turn into an ice coffin." Before the words had even finished echoing, the entire ice wall collapsed with a thunderous crash. Lu Qin stepped forward over the shattered ice, his combat knife spotless. Behind him, 12 ice sentinel statues remained frozen in their gun-raising postures, their pupils still locked in expressions of terror. "Where's the chip?" He pressed his boot down on the sentinel's wrist. The sentinel suddenly grinned eerily and pressed a button on his wristwatch. "To hell with all of you." The entire weather station began to shake violently, with icicles from the roof falling like spears. "The self-destruct sequence has been activated." I grabbed Lu Qin and rushed toward the emergency exit, only to find our path blocked by rapidly growing ice. At the critical moment, Lu Qin suddenly pressed the dragon-patterned jade pendant against my thumb ring. The shadow of the bronze cauldron expanded dramatically, briefly materializing in the real world. The falling ice spikes vaporized the instant they touched the cauldron's surface, revealing a hidden metal case concealed within the layers. Inside the box, beside the siren chip, quietly lay a tiger-shaped jade pendant, precisely the second piece of the 12 ancient jades. When we escaped the weather station, the building behind us had already collapsed into an ice cavern. Lu Qin suddenly staggered and fell to his knees, his right hand trembling too violently to grip the military dagger. Only then did I notice the half-broken ice pick embedded in his back, the wound tinged with an unnatural bluish-purple hue. "Don't use the spirit spring." He gritted his teeth and pushed me away. "The ice spikes are laced with neurotoxin." I slit my wrist without hesitation, letting my blood mingle with the spirit spring as it poured into his wound. "You." His pupils constricted sharply, watching as my blood turned golden upon contact with the toxin. Inscriptions appeared on the bronze cauldron. "Host's blood has acquired detoxification properties." In the temporary camp late at night, Lu Qin adjusted the siren chip by the fire. "The Zhao family is using weather weapons to create natural disasters." He projected a global weather map, but there's a coordinate continuously emitting resistance signals. As the image zoomed in, we all held our breath. Deep within the Kunlun Mountains, the phantom of a bronze cauldron was enveloping a 10-kilometer radius safe zone. The cauldron's surface was carved with identical runes to those inside the thumb ring. "It seems," I rubbed the newly fused tiger-shaped jade pendant, "our journey has only just begun." Outside the tent, a long wolf howl echoed through the blizzard, like the call of some guardian beast. On the 7th day of extreme cold, we arrived at Bohai Bay on specially made snowshoes. Beneath the frozen sea surface, the faint outlines of a sunken city were visible. A port city submerged during the great rains of a past era. Lu Qin used a bayonet to chisel through the ice, and the footage transmitted by the underwater drone made my breath catch. A sunken Ming Dynasty ship was wedged diagonally among the ruins of skyscrapers, the bronze figure at its bow holding a compass that pointed toward the Kunlun Mountains. The tide was due in 2 hours. Lu Qin checked his oxygen mask. Something in the wreck was interfering with the siren signal. I traced the glowing projection of a dragon-patterned jade pendant beneath the ice. The third ancient jade was calling. The deep-sea diving suit was covered in ice crystals on its surface as we found the shipwreck entrance at 30 meters underwater. The hull suddenly shook with an eerie vibration, and swarms of glowing jellyfish surged out from the portholes, their tentacles entwined with human skeletons. "Don't touch the blue lights." Lu Qin signaled a warning. "They're electrified mutants." As we bypassed the main cabin, my headlamp illuminated a gilded plaque, Xinghe's treasure ship built in the year of Gui Mao. Suddenly, the ring at his waist grew intensely hot, while a resonant hum of bronze artifacts came from the stern. The treasure ship's cargo hold was piled high with blue and white porcelain, yet at its center stood a transparent crystal coffin, eerily out of place. Inside the coffin, a young woman lay with her hands folded, cradling a jade pendant shaped like a turtle in her palms. "Live organism detected." Lu Chen's bioscanner blared frantic alarms. As we approached, the crystal coffin lid automatically opened, and the girl's eyelashes suddenly trembled. Her opened eyes had no pupils, only swirling nebulae. "Those who dare disturb the jade of Sea Calm shall be eternally buried in the Guishu abyss." The entire ship began to collapse as mutated jellyfish swarmed like arrows. Lu Chen severed the tentacle entangling my oxygen tube, and I pressed the thumb ring against the turtle-shaped jade pendant. In a blinding golden light, the entire Zhenghe treasure ship was drawn into the spatial void. Along with the oncoming swarm of jellyfish, the deep sea instantly formed a vacuum vortex, violently hurling us toward the undersea volcanic crater. "Hold on tight." Lu Chen wedged his military dagger into a crevice in the rock and grabbed me with his other hand. Amid the heat currents of the volcanic eruption, we were swept into a tunnel. The moment our oxygen masks shattered, we unexpectedly breathed fresh air. At the end of the tunnel was a spherical space filled with air, its walls adorned with relief carvings of the 12 zodiac constellations. Suspended at the center was the fourth jade pendant, Scorpio, the lost city of Atlantis. As I touched the wall, the relief suddenly projected a three-dimensional star map. Lu Chen lightly scraped the ground with his military dagger. "This isn't technology, these walls are secreting oxygen." When the star map locked onto a coordinate in the Kunlun Mountains, the entire space suddenly shook. Through the dome that had abruptly turned transparent, we saw a chilling sight. Countless mutated jellyfish were enveloping the spherical space, injecting the marine creatures they had captured into the walls. The moment those creatures touched the walls, their flesh and blood dissolved into nutrients that sustained the space. "Quick, grab the jade pendant." Lu Chen slashed through the translucent tentacles lunging at him. The instant I leaped to seize the Scorpio jade pendant, the entire undersea space began to collapse. Before the surging seawater could flood in, the thumb ring suddenly transported us onto the ice. A muffled thunderous roar echoed behind us as the sea level abruptly dropped by 3 meters, forming a massive whirlpool. Lu Chen retrieved a turtle-shaped jade pendant from the waterproof bag. "The girl in the boat coffin has vanished." The jade pendant glowed faintly in his palm, illuminating our stunned faces. A bronze pillar rose from the eye of the vortex, its surface engraved with the same inscriptions as those inside the thumb ring. At the very top was a crimson countdown. Cataclysm Phase 2. Magnetic Pole Reversal. 7 days remaining. On the 6th day before the magnetic pole reversal, we stood on the roof of the abandoned weather station, watching as purple moss visibly spread across the entire city. Radiation levels were 147 times above the safe limit. Lu Chen turned off the detector, his brow furrowed beneath the mask. The moss was emitting ionizing radiation. I broke off a piece of moss, which withered rapidly between my fingers, while the thumb ring grew scorching hot. As new characters emerged on the bronze cauldron, convertible energy source, protective gear required for absorption. Suddenly, the roar of engines echoed in the distance. 5 modified off-road vehicles surrounded the weather station, each mounted with heavy machine guns. A man in a radiation suit raised a loudspeaker. "Miss Lin, our leader requests your presence. With that glowing thumb ring of yours, in the makeshift basement laboratory." Professor Zhou's white braid was covered in purple spores, marvelous life form. He feverishly observed the petri dish. These mosses, after consuming nuclear waste, could actually synthesize pure energy. Lu Chen pressed his military dagger against the man's back. "You're using refugees for radiation experiments." The surveillance screen displayed scenes from the dungeon. Dozens of survivors were strapped into moss cultivation pods, their skin already showing signs of crystallization. Professor Zhou suddenly turned around, his eyes flashing with an eerie purple light. "They volunteered to sacrifice themselves for human evolution, just like my daughter did." On the photo inside his white lab coat, a girl in school uniform smiles in front of the nuclear power plant. The photo dated 1 day before the tsunami. The alarm suddenly blared, and Professor Zhou seized the moment to press the hidden switch on the wall. "Look out!" As I tackled Lu Chen to the ground, purple mist sprayed from the ceiling. The gas mask rapidly dissolved under intense radiation, and I instinctively raised the thumb ring. The jade pendant glowed brilliantly, actually forming a protective shield in the air. Professor Zhou seized the opportunity to rush toward the console. "As long as I extract your genetic sequences, I can resurrect them." Lu Chen's military dagger pierced through the air, nailing his right hand to the keyboard, where the blood dripped. All the incubation pods opened. The mutated moss surged toward Professor Zhou like a living creature, but he laughed maniacally. "Too late, it's already activated." The entire underground base began to tremble. and the crystallized survivors suddenly opened their eyes in unison, their pupils turning the same violet hue as the moss. Run! Lu Chen dragged me towards the emergency exit as inhuman shrieks echoed behind us. At the corner, we bumped into an unexpected figure. Little Tang Yuan was holding a tattered stuffed toy, her pale golden pupils glowing in the darkness. Sister, she raised a notebook covered in constellations. I know how to make the bad moss turn good. Inside the ventilation duct, little Tang Yuan was drawing bewildering diagrams with crayons. The baby, new species, born from purple daddy, radiation source, and green mommy, spiritual spring, can eat up all the dirty things. Lu Chen suddenly tightened his grip on the bayonet. She's talking about nuclear pollution purification. An explosion sounded from the laboratory below. We pried open the vent to look outside. Professor Zhou was suspended in a purple orb of light, his body gradually mossifying. Beneath him, the crystallized crowd knelt and howled. Father God, little Tang Yuan suddenly had a nosebleed. In 3 minutes, this place will turn into stars. When we burst through the rooftop emergency door, the entire base was already enveloped in a purple cocoon of light. Hold on tight. Lu Chen tied us together with a rope and leaped toward the opposite building. A blinding flash of light erupted behind us, and the explosion's shockwave sent us flying, mid-air. I desperately aimed the ring at the base. Retract. The entire glowing structure was swallowed into space, forming a miniature sun beside the bronze cauldron. New characters appeared on the cauldron's surface. Radiation energy conversion in progress. Remaining time, 71, 59, 59. The little dumpling weakly pointed north. The next jade pendant is in the glowing iron tower. On the horizon, the cooling towers of the nuclear power plant shimmered with an eerie blue light. The nuclear power plant's cooling towers emitted a cold, blue glow in the night, like a poisonous needle thrust into the earth. Radiation levels exceeded the limit by 893 times. Lu Chen turned off the detector, and the modified visor of his protective suit reflected my grim face. Little dumpling, are you sure you want to come? The girl, wrapped in a special lead blanket, fixed her pale golden pupils on the tower's peak. The scorpion jade pendant is crying. It's being worn on a bad person's head. I clenched the thumb ring tightly, the recently absorbed radiant sphere hovering above the bronze cauldron, casting an eerie purple glow over the entire space. Suddenly, the searchlight from the tower top swept over, and the loudspeaker broadcasted a distorted declaration. Welcome, Savior Lin Shi, please come alone to receive humanity's last hope. Before the words faded, the gate at the tower's base rose, revealing 20 envoys with varying degrees of crystallization, each holding a pure gold crown studded with diamonds. At the center of the crown, the scorpion jade pendant emitted an ominous red glow. Our leader can control radiation. The chief envoy knelt down, his crystallized fingers brushing against my protective suit. If you wear this crown, all survivors will gain immunity. Behind him, hundreds of ordinary survivors knelt in the radioactive dust, their skin already beginning to fester. A few children held out grimy wildflowers, their eyes dull and lifeless as they gazed up at me. Lu Chen's bayonet pressed against the envoy's throat. Who is your leader? The envoy suddenly grinned, his mouth splitting open to his ears. Of course, it's Professor Zhou. The moment the crown was blown off by the strong wind, I saw, those diamonds were actually miniature radiation emitters, and the inner rim of the golden crown was lined with barbs, soaked in some kind of fluorescent liquid. Those who reject divine grace. The envoys suddenly rose up in unison, their crystallized arms shattering like glass, shooting out countless purple prisms. Lu Chen spun and swung his blade, the military dagger carving electric arcs through the air, shattering most of the prisms, yet a few still pierced through the protective suit, leaving bleeding cuts on my arm. The wounds didn't bleed, instead, they began to crystallize. Little Tang Yuan suddenly rushed forward and splashed the spiritual spring water onto my wound. No, I tried to stop her but was too late. The moment the spiritual spring came into contact with the radioactive substance, an intense reaction occurred. In the blinding white light, the skin on my entire arm cracked apart, revealing the faint golden bones beneath, shimmering with starlight. Even more terrifying, I could clearly sense the trajectory of every radioactive particle, as if I had grasped some cosmic law. I see. I look at my translucent palm. The spirit spring water wasn't the antidote, it was the catalyst. From the tower's summit came the sound of shattering glass as a figure in a white lab coat leaped into the air, their silver braid whipping wildly in the radioactive wind. It was Professor Zhou, now fully crystallized, hovering 3 meters above the ground, a purple core pulsed in his chest. Lin Shi, we were meant to be allies. You call this an alliance? I pointed at the survivors suffering from radiation. Professor Zhou spread his arms with maniacal laughter as the outer wall of the cooling tower suddenly crumbled, revealing the interior. Thousands of cultivation pods were filled with clones, each bearing little Tang Yuan's face. My daughter is the only pure vessel capable of resonating with the jade pendant. He nervously stroked the cultivation pod. With your ring, I can resurrect her in every single body. Little Tang Yuan suddenly clutched her head and screamed, her pale golden pupils oozing blood. The tower's gonna blow. With a 10-second countdown, we dragged the injured survivors toward the blast shelter. Professor Zhou roared behind us, you don't understand. When the 12 jade pendants unite, only a pure vessel can withstand. A deafening explosion swallowed the rest of his words. The shockwave sent us flying, and I desperately stretched out my mutated arm mid-air. When my fingertips touched the flying Scorpio jade pendant, the radioactive dust from the entire nuclear power plant surged toward my arm like rivers flowing into the sea. After the dust settled, Lu Chen dug out half a pocket watch from the rubble. Inside the watch case was a photo of a young Professor Zhou holding his daughter in front of an observatory. Under the projected starry sky, the 12 zodiac patterns perfectly overlapped with the jade pendant's distribution map. Only the position of Scorpio was marked with a blood-drawn cross. On the day of the magnetic pole reversal, the Earth spewed magma like a wound torn open by a giant. We crossed the fissure zone on homemade heat shields, with little Tang Yuan clinging to my back, her pale golden pupils reflecting the crimson hell's cape. Sister's bones are singing, she suddenly whispered in my ear, the same song as the jade pendant. I looked down at my semi-transparent right hand, which had gained the ability to absorb any form of energy since the incident at the nuclear power plant. At this moment, it was faintly glowing, converting the heat from the magma beneath my feet into flowing golden light patterns. Lu Chen suddenly gripped my shoulder. Look ahead. 300 meters away, the ancestral home of the Zhao family stood intact amidst the sea of magma. 12 bronze pillars formed a protective array, with ancient jade pieces embedded at their tops resonating with the jade pendants we had collected. The ancestral home's gate stood wide open, as if inviting us to walk right into the trap. Lu Chen used his bayonet to flick a piece of rubble into the doorway, and the stone was instantly reduced to powder by a laser grid. Little Tang Yuan suddenly began convulsing, nosebleed dripping onto the notebook. Underground, so many little Tangyuans are crying. I suddenly remembered those clones in Professor Zhou's cultivation pods. The thumb ring abruptly grew scalding hot, projecting a holographic image. In the Zhao family's underground laboratory, hundreds of cultivation pods were arranged in a constellation formation. Inside each pod floated a clone of little Tangyuan, connected by tubes that channeled a pale golden liquid toward a massive central device. Above the device hovered the final 3 ancient jade pieces. The moment we rushed into the ancestral home, the ground split open into a bottomless abyss. Welcome to the ceremony. Xiao Mingshuan's father stood on a transparent platform, with boiling magma beneath his feet. This traitor's blood is perfect for initiating the ritual. He kicked the bloodied figure at his feet, only to realize it was Xiao Mingxian, who should have been frozen into an ice sculpture. Dad, please. Xiao Mingxian clutched at his trouser leg weakly, only to be kicked into the magma pool. Amid the screams, all the bronze pillars lit up with bloody runes, and the jade pendants we had collected suddenly flew uncontrollably toward the tops of the pillars. Stop the runes from closing. Lu Chen flung a rope toward the nearest bronze pillar. If all 12 jade pendants return to their positions, it will trigger. Before the words were finished, the entire ancestral mansion suddenly plunged vertically downward. We fell with the structure into a hollow at the Earth's core. Beneath us lay a magma lake a kilometer in diameter. On the platform at the lake center, 12 cultivation pods formed a clock-like formation. The device at the very center began to transform, extending countless tubes that stabbed toward the clones. No, little Tangyuan screamed, covering her head as a constellation pattern identical to the device's markings appeared on her forehead. My mutated arm suddenly moved on its own, as if conscious, grabbing the attacking tube and forcibly drawing the pale golden liquid back into it. The magma lake began to solidify as Father Zhao roared from the platform. "Stop. You have no idea what you're destroying." He pressed the control button. And all the clones suddenly opened their eyes, chanting eerie incantations in unison. Little Tang Yuan curled up in pain, golden vein-like lines surfacing beneath his skin. "They're extracting our memories." Images suddenly flashed through my mind: a bronze cauldron, a star chart, and a smiling girl standing before the cauldron, unmistakably resembling an older version of little Tang Yuan. "This isn't cloning." I stared at the gradually forming silhouette of a girl at the center of the device. They were resurrecting some entity. Lu Chen's military dagger suddenly flew out of his hand, piercing precisely into the core of the control console. The hollow core of the earth began to collapse as we carried the unconscious little Tang Yuan and rushed toward the exit. Behind me, the resurrected phantom of the girl let out an inhuman shriek, and all the bronze pillars exploded in response. 12 ancient jade pieces scattered in all directions, 3 of which flew automatically into my ring. As the magma surged like a tidal wave, my mutated arm erupted with a dazzling light, absorbing the entire energy of the magma lake. In the final second before the crust closed, we were blasted out of the ground by the shockwave. In the distance, 12 beams of light rose from the direction of the Kunlun Mountains, forming a massive star chart in the night sky. Little Tang Yuan suddenly opened her eyes and pointed to the center of the star map. "There, someone is waiting for us." Her voice transformed into that of a mature woman. The glaciers of the Kunlun Mountains melted under 12 beams of light, revealing a bronze city buried for millennia. Little Tang Yuan, or rather some consciousness occupying her body, was tracing the star patterns on the city wall with an unfamiliar, elegant grace. "You arrived 137 years earlier than I expected." Her fingertips brushed against the bronze, and those obscure runes spontaneously rearranged into modern text. "It seems the Siren project has indeed accelerated the selection process." Lu Chen's bayonet pressed against her back. "Get out of the child's body, child." She turned with a light laugh, her pupils now transformed into dazzling golden whirlpools of stars. "This body was always my backup vessel, just like those failed specimens in the cultivation pods." I stared at the wrench pattern emerging on her forehead, identical to the one on my hand, inside the bronze city. Holographic projections automatically played ancient scenes. 12 emissaries wearing jade pendants sat around a massive bronze cauldron, within which swirled a liquid form of starlight. The scene abruptly changed. Black mist erupted from the cauldron, instantly crystallizing 11 of the emissaries. Only the woman who resembled little Tang Yuan remained, sealing the black mist within her own body. "We are called the Tomb Guardians." The woman, now known as Xingxuan, caressed the projection. "Guarding what you call the apocalypse." She suddenly pulled open her collar, revealing a writhing black mist beneath her collarbone. "Every 3,000 years, a new vessel is needed to contain it." I suddenly realized, the little glutinous rice balls were prepared for you. "No." Xingxuan pointed at me. "You are." The entire bronze city suddenly transformed, with countless bronze chains erupting from the ground. Lu Chen severed the attacking chains but was separated by the suddenly shifting walls. I was dragged by the chains toward the central altar, while Xingxuan hovered above the bronze cauldron, inside which black mist surged like a living creature. "Don't worry, it won't hurt." She formed hand seals, just like your parents did back then. My pupils constricted violently. The bloodstain on the last page of my parents' archaeological diary suddenly became vivid in my mind. That was never blood at all, but the totem of black mist. The instant the chains wrapped around my right arm, the mutated parts suddenly erupted in growth. Golden bones pierced through my skin and autonomously impaled Xingxuan's chest. No blood flowed out. Starlight scattered from Xingxuan's wound as she stared at my arm in shock. "You've actually fused with the source essence." "Impossible, unless..." Black mist suddenly erupted from the cauldron, splitting into 2 streams that surged toward me and Xingxuan. At the critical moment, little Tang Yuan's true consciousness abruptly awakened, using all her strength to shove me aside. The black mist poured entirely into her frail body, instantly causing spiderweb-like dark veins to surface beneath her skin. Xingxuan's consciousness was forcibly expelled, shrieking in the air, "Fool, this body can't possibly withstand it." The bronze city began to collapse, and as Lu Chen burst through the wall, I was desperately clutching the convulsing little Tang Yuan. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth, yet she smiled as she pressed her forehead against my thumb ring. Sis, the password is, the Big Dipper. As we fled the Bronze City, an earth-shattering explosion erupted behind us. Xingxuan's phantom hovered mid-air, her body half-crystallized. It's useless, the black mist will find all its hosts. She suddenly looked into the distance, her face drastically changing, following her gaze. My blood ran cold. Song Yuro's amber figurine stood silently in the snow, its surface covered with purple moss. Even more terrifying, its opened eyes flickered with the same energy as the black mist. So it was you, Xingxuan howled as she lunged forward, only to be instantly consumed upon contact with the amber. The figurine's lips writhed, emitting a grotesque, gender-blended voice. Third vessel, confirmed, in the blizzard. I held the rapidly cooling little Tang Yuan and ran desperately. Lu Chen suddenly grabbed me. Look at the thumb ring. The phantom of a bronze cauldron emerged on its own, with the Big Dipper pattern appearing on its surface. When the seventh star lit up, the blood droplets coughed up by little Tang Yuan floated to form a line of text. Under the Kunlun ruins, the cycle of 60 years, 12 jade seals suppressed the demons. Her small hand suddenly grabbed my mutated fingers. Sister, next time, find the real me, before the words faded. The black patterns covering her body abruptly contracted into a single point between her eyebrows, and her entire form dissolved into starlight, leaving only 12 jade pendants arranged into a star chart on the snow. At the storm-ravaged Kunlun mountain pass, I knelt in the snow, piecing together the 12 jade pendants. The star chart left by little Tang Yuan before she vanished began to glow, each pendant floating to its corresponding constellation position. Lu Chen used his bayonet to slice open his palm, letting blood drip onto the Big Dipper pattern. This was her final clue. The third vessel is approaching. Lu Chen suddenly turns, his bayonet pointing into the depths of the snowstorm. 500 meters, moving at extreme speed. I look up in the direction he's pointing, my pupils contracting sharply. Song Yuro's amber figurine is actually gliding across the snow, dragging countless tendrils of purple moss behind it. The amber figurine halts 10 meters away, its cracked lips writhing, hand over the source, its chest cavity pulsed with a grotesque substance, a mixture of black mist and purple moss. Suddenly, those tendrils violently elongated, stabbing toward the floating jade pendant. Not a chance. I swung my mutated right arm, and the golden bone claws clashed with the tendrils. Erupting in blinding sparks, Lu Chen seized the moment to hurl his military dagger. The blade pierced the terracotta warrior's forehead with pinpoint accuracy, yet what should have been a fatal strike only made it stagger momentarily. Black mist gushed from the wound, instantly repairing the damage. Useless, the terracotta warrior spoke in Xingxuan's voice. This body has already... It suddenly curled up in agony, spiderweb-like cracks appearing on the amber surface. Little Tang Yuan's residual consciousness was struggling within. The 12 jade pendants suddenly trembled in unison, their projected starlight weaving into the phantom of a bronze cauldron in midair. Now, I lunged toward the center of the star map, my mutated arm plunging into the pillar of light. In excruciating pain, the flesh of my entire arm dissolved away, revealing pure golden bones composed of starlight. The jade pendants transformed into streams of light that surged into the arm bones, carving constellation patterns across the skin's surface. The amber figurine let out an inhuman shriek as all the purple moss detached from its body and flew toward it, forming a grotesque carapace on its surface. It's evolving into its final form. Lu Chen picked up the military dagger, and the blade began to crystallize. Lin Shi, catch it. He threw the mutating bayonet to me, and I instinctively caught it with my starlight arm. Boom, the bayonet fused and morphed with the arm, extending into a long sword engraved with star patterns. When the humanoid puppet's carapace fully formed, it had transformed into a 3-meter-tall monster. Its chest cavity split open, revealing a core composed of black mist and purple crystals. You will all become nourishment for the new world. The blended voices of Xingxuan and Song Yuro emanated from the core. I gripped the star-patterned long sword and charged forward. The moment the blade clashed against the carapace, the Kunlun mountain suddenly shook violently. From beneath the earth came the resonant hum of a bronze cauldron, shaking the snow from the entire mountain range into the sky. Amid the swirling snowflakes, I saw, countless bronze chains erupted from the ground, precisely coiling around the monster's limbs. At the end of each chain hung a miniature bronze cauldron, its opening aimed directly at the creature's core. Is this the demon-suppressing grand formation? Lu Qin was stunned as he witnessed the scene. The monster struggled frantically but couldn't break free from the chains. Seizing the opportunity, I leaped up and thrust my star-patterned longsword straight into the core of its chest. No, you simply don't understand. The moment the sword tip pierced the core, time seemed to stand still. Black mist and violet light gushed from the wound, frantically absorbed by the surrounding small bronze cauldrons. The amber shell shattered inch by inch, revealing Song Yuro's original face beneath. Her eyes cleared, but a strange smile played at the corners of her lips. Lin Shi, did you think this was over? Her body suddenly burst into spontaneous flames, within which the phantom images of 12 jade pendants emerged, forming a new celestial map that pointed to a location in the Pacific Ocean. After the flames died out, only ashes remained on the ground. My starlight arm returned to normal, except for a tiny star map tattoo that appeared on the inner side of my wrist. Lu Qin picked up the only intact item, Song Yuro's jade earring from her left ear. This is, he wiped away the charred dust on the surface, revealing coordinates inside, 30 degrees north, 145 degrees east. I suddenly remembered the location information in my parents' diary that had been blurred by bloodstains. The shadow of the bronze cauldron reappeared, the star chart on its surface perfectly aligning with the coordinates we had collected. Finally focusing on the deepest part of the Mariana Trench, something there is calling to the ring. The storm circle above the Mariana Trench resembles a rotating black wall. The nuclear submarine we were aboard groaned under the immense pressure at 10,000 meters deep. Outside the porthole, luminous giant creatures swam past, their elongated silhouettes resembling human figures. Sonar indicated metallic structures below. Lu Qin adjusted the depth gauge, but the readings were off. It was moving. I rubbed the jade earring, its coordinates forming a red dot at our current location. Suddenly, the entire submarine shuddered violently, and all instrument panels simultaneously erupted in sparks, not metallic structures. I stared at the colossal entity rising outside the porthole, my throat tightening. It was alive. It was a mobile fortress forged from bronze and flesh, its surface covered with pulsating vein-like patterns. 12 colossal bronze pillars encircled the main structure, each topped with a jade disc the size of a soccer ball, precisely enlarged versions of the ones we had collected. Welcome home, children, the submarine communicator suddenly crackled with Xingxuan's voice, while outside the porthole, a fissure split open in the flesh-and-bone fortress, revealing a star-studded passage within. Lu Qin tightened his grip on the fully crystallized military dagger. Oxygen reserves would last only 4 more hours. I looked at the star map tattoo on my wrist, which was resonating with the castle, enough to end all of this. At the end of the passage was a spherical space, with a kilometer-high bronze cauldron suspended at its center. Inside the cauldron, black mist churned, and its surface was bound by chains securing 12 crystallized bodies, one of which was unmistakably little Tangyuan. A vessel is, after all, just a vessel. Xingxuan emerged from behind the cauldron, this time in a real body, though half her face had already crystallized. Did you think what you destroyed in Kunlun was my true form? That was merely a scrap of my fingernail. With a wave of her hand, chains of black mist shot from the cauldron and wrapped around my starlit arm. The essence should return to its rightful owner. In excruciating pain, the skin on my arm dissolved once more as the golden bones were forcibly extracted. Lu Qin swung his blade at the chains, but the crystallized bayonet shattered upon contact. With a light flick of her finger, Xingxuan sent him flying as if struck by an invisible hammer, crashing into the bronze wall. Humans always overestimate themselves, dragging me toward the massive cauldron by the chains. She sneered. Your ancestors were just as foolish 3,000 years ago, thinking they could purify him with the source. As my face pressed against the icy surface of the cauldron, a horrifying truth emerged from the black mist. The bronze cauldron was never a vessel, it was a prison. Inside, fragments of some cosmic-level life form were confined, with the 12 tomb guardians using their own bodies as locks to barely maintain the seal. Now, it's time to change the lock. Xingxuan's hand presses against my back. At the critical moment of life and death, the jade earring suddenly becomes scorching hot and falls off, splitting into 12 beams of green light that shoot toward the crystallized body in the cauldron. Little Tang Yuan's eyes suddenly open. Sister, all the crystallized bodies speak simultaneously, their voices overlapping into a majestic resonance. The Big Dipper, the seventh star, suddenly realizing. I slapped the seventh star on the cauldron's constellation map with my remaining left hand. Boom, the entire bronze castle shook violently. Xingxuan screamed in an attempt to stop it but was swallowed by the suddenly animated bronze walls. My starlight bones flew back automatically, reassembling my arm as the complete constellation map emerged on it. So that's how it is. I looked at the freed little Tangyuans. You were the real locks all along. As the castle began to collapse, we dragged the unconscious Liu Ken toward the submarine. Behind them, 12 crystallized bodies held hands around the massive cauldron. Chanting an ancient requiem, the black mist was forcibly pressed back into the cauldron, and the final shriek of Xingxuan echoed through the deep sea. You have no idea what you're unleashing. As the submarine ascended, sonar showed countless points of light rising from the seabed, revealing more bronze castles gathering toward the surface. Little Tang Yuan's consciousness whispered in my mind, "Find the original cauldron." I looked at my wrist. The star map tattoo was pointing to another location in the Pacific, the Bermuda Triangle. The waters of the Bermuda Triangle shimmered with eerie, multicolored whirlpools under the sunlight. The moment our research vessel entered the core zone, all electronic devices malfunctioned simultaneously. Liu Chen adjusted the rigging with blood-soaked bandages, starlight flowing across my reassembled arm. This power had been growing ever since our return from the Mariana Trench. Something's rising from the depths. Liu Chen suddenly pointed toward the stern. The sea parted as a colossal bronze cauldron a kilometer in diameter emerged from the waters, its surface engraved with star maps older than the Kunlun Mountains. When it fully hovered in the air, what poured from its mouth was not black mist, but a dazzling river of stars. Little Tang Yuan's voice suddenly echoed from the starry river. Sister, this is the final choice. The starry river condensed before us into the silhouette of a 12-year-old girl. With a light touch of her fingertip, she revealed two futures. In the left image, the bronze cauldron completely sealed the black mist, but all traces of the cataclysm remained permanently, leaving humanity to struggle for survival amidst radiation and mutations. In the scene on the right, the black mist is released and purified at the cost of resetting all existing traces of civilization. Like formatting a hard drive, the Tomb Guardian maintained the wrong choice for 3,000 years. The little Tang Yuan of the Star River points to the left, but what our mother left us is the right side. The mother she mentioned is the phantom that emerged from the cauldron, the original form of Xingxuan who first sealed the black mist. At the moment of choice, purple tentacles suddenly shot out from the seabed, the remnants of Song Yuro's mutated form. It carried the last wisp of black mist and charged toward the cyan cauldron. Watch out! Liu Chen pushed me away, only to have his shoulder pierced by the tentacle. My starlight arm moved on its own, grabbing the tentacle. The moment our energies clashed, excruciating pain flooded through me as countless memory fragments flashed before my eyes. Song Yuro's agony when the Star World consciousness invaded her. Little Tang Yuan's 10,000 cycles of sacrifice. My parents' shock upon discovering the bronze cauldron at the archaeological site, and most crucially of all, the black mist's true nature was actually cosmic-level healing energy, just incompatible with human physiology. Is this the truth? Trembling, I gazed at the Qinggang cauldron about to be tainted. Suddenly, the starlight dumpling merged into my body, and in that instant, I comprehended the entire legacy of the Tomb Guardian. My starlit arm pressed against the center of the cauldron star map as I uttered the incantation engraved in my genes, with source essence as the guide, the abyss as the crucible. The entire sea boiled as the bronze cauldron began to disintegrate, with black mist and violet light forcibly merging. A massive vortex appeared over the Bermuda Triangle, while multicolored auroras enveloped the entire Earth. Liu Chen struggled to crawl over and grasped my hand. No matter the outcome, we'll face it together. As the blinding light swallowed the world, I saw the most beautiful sight. Inside the ring, an extremely fine crack appeared. Song Yuro's mutated form stretched into glowing trees, while Zhao Mingxuan's ice sculptures melted into rainbows. The Kunlun Bronze City rose to become a new continent, and the castles of the Mariana Trench formed an island chain. And finally, my ring was complete, with 12 jade pendants rotating inside. revealing little Tang Yuan's smiling face at the center. This is not destruction, her voice echoed across the heavens and earth. It is the mother's gift to all life, a second chance. As the morning sun rises, we stand on the flower-covered hills. In the distance, survivors emerge from their shelters, gazing in astonishment at the renewed world. From Lu Chen's wound blooms a starflower, and my thumb ring transforms into a birthmark on my wrist. The final fragment of the bronze cauldron lands in my palm, inscribed with the true epilogue. In the first year of the new era, all sins return to dust, and you shall endure like sparks, passed down forever. A gentle breeze swept by, scattering glowing dandelion-like seeds across the sky. Within each particle lay slumbering fragments of little Tang Yuan's memories. Lu Chen suddenly pointed toward the horizon. New sprouts are breaking through the soil, their leaves shimmering with the faint glow of star maps. Don't go away, the next story will be even more exciting. Bang! I used a kitchen knife to sever the zombie's head, which rolled clattering into the corner. With this, all 3 zombies in the asylum have been dealt with by me, and this marks the 3rd day of the apocalypse. For these 3 days, I've exhausted every trick in the book to deal with the security guard, chef, and janitor who turned into zombies. Now, in the mental asylum, I'm the only normal person left. Along with 7 patients still in deep sleep, the first to wake up was Uncle Zhang. Uncle Zhang suffers from delusions, often fantasizing that he's a deity descending to endure earthly trials. This time I woke up, the symptoms had clearly worsened. Your Highness has suffered greatly. Indeed, I had suffered, thinking about the days and nights I had endured over the past 3 days. Tears of sorrow streamed down my face. This place is indeed a bit shabby. Allow this old servant to make some improvements immediately. 70-year-old Uncle Zhang stood up and swiftly led me to the courtyard with vigorous strides. I stood there in a daze, unsure of what Uncle Zhang intended to do. Uncle Zhang closed his eyes, murmuring words I couldn't comprehend. This kind of ritual had happened before. Otherwise, how could this madhouse have come to be? But this time, it seemed a little different, because when old Zhang suddenly opened his eyes, I saw a flash of golden light in them. By the urgent command of the law, change, change, change. As his voice fell, the earth shook and the mountains trembled, the heavens spun and the earth turned. When I finally steadied myself and saw the scene before me, I couldn't help but open my mouth wide in astonishment. The originally simple 2-story house had now transformed into a small, glittering golden palace. Uncle Zhang, you are. What kind of superpower is this? It's so amazing. As an ordinary person who's only undergone minor physical modifications, I'm truly blown away by this. Your Highness, have you forgotten? This old servant is the Golden God, the master of the metallic elements between heaven and earth. Building a golden palace in the blink of an eye is but a trifling trick, little trick, little trick. Hee. As an ordinary person, I just want to shed bitter tears. I was admiring the resplendent palace when a rich aroma of plants and trees wafted over. Then I saw Aunt Qing walk out. Aunt Qing approached and gave me a deep bow. Your humble servant greets Her Highness the Princess. I smiled politely yet courteously. I had to maintain my composure. After all, I was the director of the mental asylum. Even before the apocalypse, they were leaders, and now they shouldn't lose too much of their dignity. Aunt Qing glanced around and said apologetically, "It's this old servant's negligence to have Your Highness in such an environment." What's wrong with this environment? I was a bit confused and looked around. It's wonderful, with the palace resplendent in gold and jade, surrounded by lush flowers and trees, filled with the fragrance of blossoms and the songs of birds. Aunt Qing's hands began to move, performing a series of complex gestures that dazzled my eyes, as if she were casting a spell. Then, I finally understood what Aunt Qing meant. The environment I was in before was indeed quite simple. The surroundings now are simply like a fairyland, with exotic flowers and rare herbs all around, their fragrance refreshing and delightful. In such an apocalyptic world, I can handle it again. The 7 patients in my family have respectively awakened the 5 elemental abilities of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, along with 2 additional abilities, psychic and spatial. In such a madhouse, I can just lie flat and relax, but reality did not spare me. Never in my wildest dreams did I expect that 7 patients would kneel before me, begging me to go out and expand my territory, to restore my former glory. There's absolutely no need for this, but there was no other way. If I didn't agree, those 7 would remain kneeling on the ground indefinitely. Moreover, the eldest among them, Grandpa Lu, who had awakened a psychic-type ability, even declared that if I didn't go, he would dash his head against the ground and die on the spot. With tears in my eyes, I could only nod in agreement. Then the 7 who called themselves my guardian ministers sprang into action, saying that although the ancient kingdom no longer existed, the proper ceremonial pomp must not be lacking. I was genuinely moved. It really made me feel like a princess for once. The surroundings of the asylum were desolate, with not a single person in sight, nor any animals to be found. Finally, after much deliberation among the 7 of us, we managed to select a mutated wild boar as the representative to pull the carriage, and so, I boarded the princess carriage, led by the mutated boar with 4 mutated rabbits assisting from behind. The driver was the eldest, Grandpa Lu, who claimed that with his seniority and vast experience, he was the rightful one to take the helm. My princess carriage lived up to its reputation. Resplendent and adorned with exotic flowers and rare plants, flanking me were my 6 other trusted ministers, giving the procession a truly royal air. Well, I must admit, I was starting to get into the role myself. Either I go crazy in the end, or we all go crazy together. After walking for half a day, we finally weren't in a desolate wasteland anymore. We encountered a wandering horde of zombies. The zombies sensed the presence of living humans and, like cats drawn to meat, immediately surged toward us. As an ordinary human, seeing so many zombies charging at us was still terrifying. I just hadn't had time to make any frightened movements when I heard Grandpa Lu take the initiative to assert his authority. "How dare you!" This angry shout must have carried his psychic powers, as I felt somewhat intimidated by it. "Kneel down immediately." Upon seeing Her Highness the Princess, the zombies were instantly overwhelmed by the psychic power, trembling violently before dropping to their knees one by one, their heads heavily thudding against the ground. The scene was somewhat dazzling. I'm starting to enjoy this outing. It seems quite interesting. Wherever we passed next, zombies knelt in droves, and my equipment had also been upgraded. No longer were they the pitch-black mutated pigs, but 5 snow-white mutated steeds. I was now clad in a magnificent princess gown, its train trailing elegantly behind me, with a golden crown gleaming atop my head. By noon, we found a restaurant to settle in. This restaurant was quite famous before the apocalypse, and I used to enjoy coming here. Now, however, it's surrounded by hundreds of zombies, with occasional sounds of sorrow and despair coming from inside. Where Grandpa Lu's gaze fell, not a single zombie could hold its ground, all obediently assuming a prostrate position. I stepped out of the carriage, placing my hands on Grandpa Lu and Aunt Qing's arms, and walked calmly into the restaurant. The sturdy gate that could once hold back zombies now silently opened on its own. Before these 7 extraordinary beings in my courtyard, nothing could stand in my way. "Shou Yuan." At that moment, a sharp voice rang out. I turned to look. Wasn't this Fang Yiru, the #1 supporter of my illegitimate half-sister? "How dare you!" Outrageous. "How dare you! How dare you address Her Highness the Princess by her name?" Slap his mouth. Before I could even react, the 7 patients beside me couldn't take it anymore. This was taking the roleplay way too far. Fang Yiru had already been forced to her knees by the mental pressure, and that wasn't all. She couldn't stop herself from slapping her own face. Light, slap, slap, slap. The sound of slaps echoed incessantly, and even I felt a twinge of toothache listening to those sharp cracks, but I felt no remorse. Back when I lost the inheritance battle with Zhou Yaoyao and was driven out of the family, this Fang Yiru gathered her gang of so-called friends, and cornered me in an alley. If I hadn't fought for my life that night, I probably wouldn't have survived. Only after delivering a full 100 slaps did Fang Yiru finally stop. By then, she couldn't even speak. Both sides of her face were swollen beyond recognition, like a fluffy steamed bun. Although Fang Yiru is both foolish and wicked, she's clearly quite bold, daring to glare at me with such venomous eyes at this moment. I actually quite enjoy this kind of look, the frustration of someone who despises me but can't do anything about it. It's downright satisfying. But this clearly angered the 7 patients standing beside me. Zhang Bo pointed his finger and said, "Unrepentant, detain her first for interrogation." Then Fang Yiru was locked inside a golden cage, shaped like those ancient prisoner carts seen on TV, with with only her head sticking out. Of course, Fang Yiro was also shackled with handcuffs and leg irons. I glanced at Uncle Zhang. In the mental hospital, he must have watched plenty of period dramas. The wheels of the prison cart were also made, and they were golden too, without any escorts. It doesn't seem fitting for Her Highness the Princess. Uncle Zhang looked at Fang Yiro and the prison cart, frowning with some difficulty. A quick-witted survivor immediately stepped forward. How about we help escort this person? Old Zhang turned to look at me, waiting for my decision. Would it slow you down? I wasn't entirely sure just how powerful old Zhang and his 6 companions really were. Your Highness overestimates the situation. We are immortals of Nirvana, with extraordinary abilities. I fell silent for a moment. What should I do? I really want to give old Zhang some medicine. Otherwise I might be the one needing it soon. In the end, I let them all follow. Among these people were some elderly and children, the youngest not even able to walk yet. In an environment overrun with zombies, mutated animals, and plants, survival is tough, so protect what you can when possible. The restaurant still had some ingredients left, and this time, Uncle Zhang and the other 6 didn't need to lift a finger. Naturally, those skilled in cooking stepped in to help. After enjoying a delicious lunch, we set off again. Bringing these people along was a wise decision. No more enduring Uncle Lin's grilled meat every day. There's no helping it. Among the 7 of us, Uncle Lin's fire-based ability is the most suitable for cooking, but aside from grilling, he doesn't know how to do anything else. Moreover, he often burns the food. What can I say except to eat it with tears in my eyes? All set to go. Yet Uncle Zhang frowned again. Aside from the 7 of us regent ministers and these newly recruited escort guards, we still have too few attendants. It really doesn't match our princess's prestige. Faced with a group of deeply delusional mental patients, what else could I do but remain silent? Perhaps, I could also wait to see what bizarre ideas they come up with next. The 7 patients gathered together to discuss and ultimately decided to recruit zombies as their army. Nowadays, it's really hard to see people on the road, so we can only recruit some zombies. But don't worry, Your Highness, these zombies are under my watch. And they won't cause any trouble. All right then. And so, as we traveled, we continued to gather the zombies along the way. Aunt Qing, who has always been particular about cleanliness, couldn't stand the filthy appearance of the zombies, so she asked Wenbo, a water element ability user, to give them all a shower. The washed zombies did look somewhat cleaner, but they also appeared a bit too plain. Aunt Qing then came over and asked me, Your Highness, what kind of flowers do you like? Sunflowers. Aunt Qing nodded. It will surely please Your Highness. What do I like? Sunflowers. I glanced at my carriage, already surrounded by exotic flowers and rare plants, but indeed, there were no common flowers like sunflowers. Then planting some sunflowers would be fine. When I'm bored, I can even snack on some sunflower seeds. I just overlooked that there's a Pacific Ocean of difference between the thinking of normal people and psychopaths. Then I saw sunflowers blooming from the heads of those zombies. Some had 1 flower, others had 2. This is based on their ability levels. 1 flower for first tier, 2 for second tier. We haven't encountered any third tier yet. The sunflowers on the zombies' heads all faced the sun, which actually looks a bit cute from this angle. Vast stretches of them bloom brilliantly. If it weren't blooming on a zombie's head, I'd actually like to admire the sunflower properly. Aunt Qing still felt it was a bit too plain, so she dressed the zombies in grass skirts. Level 1 zombies were red grass skirts, Level 2 zombies were green grass skirts. At first glance, the sea of red and green dresses was a bit blinding to the eyes. I retreated into the carriage, out of sight, out of mind, whether it was the sheer spectacle of the procession or the uniqueness of the outfits. I even spotted a zombie in the distance wearing a stunned expression. Well, even the zombies were shocked. This was undoubtedly the most eye-catching sight in the post-apocalyptic world. In the swaying carriage, I felt somewhat drowsy. Io, Yamalii, ho-ho, I snapped awake instantly. What kind of demonic sound was that? I quickly lifted the curtain. Could it be that we were too conspicuous and got attacked? Then what came into view was the scene of zombies performing a collective chorus, with Wenbo conducting. I remembered hearing that before coming to the asylum, Wenbo was supposedly involved in music. I think I'm starting to understand why Wenbo ended up in the asylum. Wenbo, "Stop it now. This singing is giving me a headache." Wenbo turned his head and looked at me with confusion. "What's wrong, Your Highness? Doesn't this singing have such a powerful momentum? Look, even the mutated creatures around us are too scared to come near." Is that so?" I looked around and saw that the mutated plants and animals were indeed huddled together, trembling. It seems this effect is still in place. Perhaps their brains were also rattled by the shock. If it makes things safer, then so be it. I got back into the carriage, and as I listened, it seemed I gradually got used to it. After getting used to it, I started feeling sleepy again. In a daze, I drifted off to sleep. In my dream, I met my crush. And like a princess and prince, we had a beautiful ending. Just as we were about to walk hand in hand into the wedding chapel, I suddenly felt myself being lifted into the air, empty. I suddenly woke up and looked down, really in the air, and at an altitude of 10,000 meters, I was actually hanging in the sky, swinging back and forth like a swing at that moment. Looking around, all kinds of creatures were hanging everywhere in a dazzling array. There were ordinary humans like me, superhumans, and mutated plants and animals. Basically, as long as it was alive, it could be hung up there. Looking a bit further away, roughly at the center, there are small green cages covered with tiny red flowers. Inside each of these cages, 2 creatures are confined. I glanced briefly and saw combinations of humans and superhumans, humans and mutated animals, humans and mutated plants, as well as mutated animals and mutated plants. The combinations varied. It's just all kinds of combinations. I instantly tensed up. If I were locked up with mutated animals, it would be nothing short of life-threatening. Where are my 7 regent ministers? Come quickly and save your princess. Just as I was thinking this, an earth-shattering sound suddenly echoed through the heavens and earth. "Wretched creature, how dare you offend Her Highness the Princess? Show no mercy." Then a dazzling array of lights flashed, and the thing holding me began to shake violently. After persisting for about 10 more minutes, that thing finally gave up on us hangers-on and threw us down from the high altitude. Countless terrified screams nearly pierced through the clouds, threatening to burst eardrums. Fortunately, a soft water net caught us mid-air. It was Wenbo who intervened. Then this layer of water net slowly descended. I slowly stood up, and the other creatures around me also rose to their feet. Standing on it felt just like riding an elevator. And under different circumstances, one might have enjoyed the scenic mountain views beside us. Finally, when the water net touched the ground, it was retracted, and everyone landed safely. In an instant, I was surrounded by petals, creating a safe space around me. This was Aunt Qing protecting me from the other creatures nearby, harmed by the creature. By this time, my 7 regent ministers had already fought 300 rounds with that thing, and there was finally an outcome. All 7 of them approached with fierce momentum, and that thing finally revealed its true form. It was a tree, of course. At this moment, it had already been beaten by the 7 into a malnourished little sapling, forced to shrink 1,000,000 times, becoming a 3-meter-tall tree. "You damnable demon tree, your crimes are heinous and unforgivable. I am a 1,000-year-old ginkgo tree, not some demon tree." The ginkgo tree emitted a hoarse, aggrieved voice. Old Zhang was furious and was about to strangle this demonic tree on the spot. I thought it would be better to hear what it had to say. After all, it was a 1,000-year-old being. "Why do you hang living creatures on your branches?" The ginkgo tree hesitated, seeming a bit shy. "It's in Luoqing. There's a very famous Taoist temple. Inside the temple, there's a huge silk tree, and people would throw marriage prayer bags onto it, praying for love." Strangely, I detected a tone of envy in the ginkgo tree's voice. "I now have the ability, so I must help them." To my surprise, I understood. This ginkgo tree was acting as a matchmaker, directly hanging all the creatures it touched on its branches, and then assigning them romantic matches. So, those 2 creatures trapped in the green cages were paired together. But wouldn't such combinations between humans and mutated animals pose serious life-threatening risks? The ginkgo tree hasn't gone through 9 years of compulsory education and doesn't know about reproductive isolation, is the result of random pairings an attempt to create soulmates. As if understanding my skepticism, the ginkgo tree immediately pointed in a certain direction. My head turned before my thoughts could catch up, and then I saw a sight that burned my eyes. A bald, Burly man was seen cuddling affectionately with a mutated squirrel, looking utterly enamored. Old Zhang was right. What a sinful sight. Lock them up. I pointed at the ginkgo tree. With such poor taste, it still aspires to be a matchmaking tree. It must be re-educated, at least completing the 9-year compulsory education first. As soon as my words fell, old Zhang tied up the ginkgo tree tightly, then treated it to a golden cage as well, but the ginkgo tree had no head, only a bunch of branches sticking out. Looking eager and still trying to hang people to matchmake, just looking at it made me angry. I gritted my teeth. Turn it upside down. The ginkgo tree was turned upside down, with only its roots sticking out. Now it was finally quiet. False alarm. Let's keep moving. 2 days later, we arrived outside City A, the place where I once grew up. I barely had time to react when Grandpa Lu's expression turned serious. There are a million zombies besieging the city ahead. Then let's get out of here quickly. A million zombies. Just the thought of it is terrifying. We're too late. The Zombie King has already spotted us. What level is the Zombie King? Above level 5, Grandfather Lu, the psychic ability user, said gravely. I instantly straightened my expression. It had only been a few days into the apocalypse, and amidst the widespread presence of 1st and 2nd level zombies, a 5th level one had already emerged. Zombies above this level are truly terrifying. When the nest is overturned, no egg can remain intact. I couldn't help feeling somewhat dejected. Fortunately, we're at level 6, so it shouldn't be a big problem, old Zhang added from the side. My heart, which had fallen to the bottom, instantly soared back up. It seems I can afford to think even more highly of my 7 patients, and at that moment, the zombies surrounding the city ahead began to stir. They retreated like a tide to both sides, leaving a path in the middle, with a million zombies ahead. The pressure on an ordinary person like me was immense, so I hid inside the carriage. Peeking through the carriage curtain, to look outside, suddenly, I shivered. Why did it suddenly feel so cold? Oh, this is really not an illusion. It's snowing. I widened my eyes. It's the middle of summer, July or August, the hottest time of the year, yet snow is falling, in flurries, amid the swirling snowflakes. The sound of footsteps approached. The entire world was silent, with only the rhythmic sound of footsteps audible. Everyone's attention was drawn to the footsteps, their gazes fixed on the snow-covered road. Gradually, the figure dressed in a white shirt and black trousers came into view. The person had neat short hair, and their black leather shoes gleamed brightly. It didn't seem like the apocalypse at all, more like they were heading to an international meeting, so clean and sharp, full. Yet the face remained indistinct, as if shrouded in snow, and a single glance made the eyes sting unbearably. In what seemed like an instant, the Zombie King, who had been miles away just moments ago, was now mere meters away. Who's inside? The Zombie King didn't speak, yet everyone seemed to hear those words in their hearts. Stop using your powers and halt the snow immediately. If our princess gets frostbite, can you bear the responsibility? The tense and murderous atmosphere suddenly froze. This was undoubtedly a case of severe mental illness. Suddenly, I felt a gaze fall upon me, and the biting cold was instantly dispelled. Then, the fluttering snowflakes also ceased. Those inside, stay where you are. When these words echoed in our hearts, the 7 patients instantly grew furious. Don't know when to quit. Drag him down and beat him to death with sticks. Then, the 2 sides began to fight. Moreover, both sides tacitly moved away from this area to a more distant battlefield. Another dazzling array of colors and a sky-darkening battle ensued, until finally, a victor emerged. All 7 patients had sustained some injuries, while the Zombie King was already tied up securely. Only then did I finally breathe a sigh of relief, looking at the 7 patients in my care with starry eyes. The Zombie King is indeed formidable, of course. How else could he be the Zombie King? But he's really good-looking. I was just thinking of capturing the Zombie King to be your consort. And then he happened to be defeated. I quickly waved my hands. Absolutely not, Your Highness. This Zombie King is truly handsome. At least take a look first. No way. Humans and zombies can't be together. We're not even the same species. They all tried to persuade me, but I remained firm in my stance. Being with a zombie, especially the Zombie King, I'm afraid I wouldn't dare close my eyes to sleep, seeing how resolute I was. The 7 of them stopped trying to convince me and decided to take the Zombie King away for reincarnation. Just at that moment, the Zombie King suddenly raised his head. I glanced casually, then froze in shock. My idol, isn't that my idol? Wait, let's keep him. I do need a prince consort. My face must be very red, but you're not the same species. Handsome looks can break the rules. And just like that, I gained a royal consort. Grandpa Lu said that once we capture City A, he'll hold a wedding for me and my crush. It feels like a pie falling from the sky. The wedding with my crush was something I only dared to dream about before. My crush and I were desk mates for 12 years, from elementary school through high school, but fate separated us in college. I only got into an ordinary, first-year university, while my crush was directly admitted to Tsinghua University. I was still a sophomore when my crush had already completed his university courses and went abroad for further studies. I wonder if he still remembers me. Back then, he tutored me every day, and now it's my turn to take care of him. But first, let's deal with City A. City A. My dear father, his third wife, and that illegitimate daughter who usurped the nest are all here. My dear father was once penniless. After marrying my mother, he not only gained wealth but also the strong support of my grandfather, which is how he gradually expanded the company. Who would have thought that after my grandfather lost his power, he would start acting without restraint, keeping several women outside, and my mother, unable to bear it any longer, she even developed depression and was forcibly sent to a mental asylum by him, claiming she had mental issues. I accompanied my mother in the mental asylum, only to have her secretly take her own life in less than half a year. Less than a month after my mother's death, he resorted to tricks to strip me of my inheritance rights and drove me out of the house, leaving me with nothing but the mental asylum. The reason he gave me the asylum was because he despised the fact that my mother had died there, considering it unlucky. Once, everyone thought I had fallen into hell, with no possibility of ever rising again. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that the apocalypse would come, and I would return in such a manner. My dear father, my beloved sister, are you still alive and well? The man of my dreams is now considered an ally on our side. Wherever we passed, the zombies immediately retreated to both sides. When we reached the city gate of City A, there was finally movement on the city walls. A dozen high-level ability users led the way, followed closely by a young man. The man was dressed in a red suit, with shoulder-length hair, and his features were bold and sharp. Know this man, he was originally my fiancé, Chen Shuai, but later, he was stolen away by my illegitimate half-sister. Who would have thought that after the apocalypse arrived, Chen Shuai would also become a top-tier superhuman? Following behind him is Zhou Linlin. My dear sister, Shen Jun, have you really thought this through? Our City A has Dr. Bei, the person in the world most likely to develop a zombie vaccine. Do you want to be a zombie for the rest of your life? If not for yourself, then think about your family and friends. I sat inside the carriage, and neither Chen Shuai nor Zhou Linlin noticed me. No need. If my demands aren't met, let the zombies flatten City A. As this voice echoed in everyone's minds, the million zombies instantly became restless, their pairs of red eyes all turning to Chen Shuai and his companion. Chen Shuai's face immediately turned cold, and he waved his hand. Instantly, cannons were brought forward. These are no ordinary cannons. Chen Shuai just said this one sentence, then provocatively looked at the male god. Chen Shuai pressed his hand downward, and immediately an Esper activated the cannon. Instantly, a black laser was fired, and the circle of zombies hit by it instantly turned into rotting water. I immediately looked at the cannon. Could it be that what it fired was corpse-dissolving liquid? Will the idol be alright? I quickly reached out a hand to grab his, trying to get him to hide. Instead, he traced a circle on my palm and gave it a gentle squeeze. I hastily withdrew my hand, my face burning crimson. It felt like time had rewound to high school days, back when the teacher would call on me, answering questions. When I'm nervous, my crush would also draw circles in my palm, then give it a gentle squeeze to encourage me, and then I wouldn't be scared anymore. And now, my crush still does the same. Years have passed. I haven't forgotten, and neither has he. Bang, bang, bang. A loud commotion came from outside. I hurriedly looked out and saw Uncle Zhang in a rage, hurling several golden eggs at the city tower. They were truly golden eggs. The enormous golden eggs left craters wherever they landed. Because of Uncle Zhang's intervention, the two sides immediately clashed. Chen Shui was a lightning-based superhuman. With purple electric arcs flickering in his hands, with a mere wave, a group of zombies would be scorched and fall to the ground. Meanwhile, Zhou Linlin was a healing superhuman, always ready to rescue the injured on the battlefield. If it weren't for this despicable couple, they would have made a perfect post-apocalyptic CP to ship. Unfortunately, they encountered the ultimate power couple. Chen Shui might stand a chance against my 7 patients or the male god in a one-on-one fight. But in a group brawl, they were instantly wiped out. In just 1 hour, Chen Shui and Zhou Linlin were already tied up, stuffed into golden cages, and delivered right before me. At this moment, Grandpa Lu lifted the carriage curtain for me, revealing my dignified and composed figure sitting inside. I gave the two of them a radiant smile, and they instantly looked as if they'd seen a ghost. I held on to Grandpa Lu's hand to step down from the carriage. The escaped coachman and maid have been captured. How to deal with them is at your highness's discretion. Uncle Zhang added his own lines without warning, and caught off guard, I stumbled and nearly fell off the carriage. Luckily, the male god beside me caught me in time. Such a runaway slave deserves a scarlet punishment, lest they taint the princess's eyes. Aunt Qing, the gentle you has become so cruel now. Then 2 vines swiftly lashed out, intending to drag the two of them down. I thought about it and stopped him. That's letting them off too easy, making them slaves forever, with no hope of ever rising again. That's the greatest punishment. And so, Marshal Chen became my coachman, not the kind who sits at the front driving the carriage, but the kind who pulls it alongside the white horse. The white horse seemed to dislike this new companion, always snorting at him. As for Zhou Linlin, her job was to serve me tea and water. If she refused to work, Aunt Qing would immediately whip out vines to drag her out. Surrounded by zombies and mutated plants and animals, she wouldn't even leave behind a complete body. Never expected that this despicable couple, who initially appeared with such strong leading character vibes, would end up like this. Once again, I marvel at my effortlessly victorious life. Feels like the world's most powerful forces are already by my side. Oh, and naturally, my dear father and that homewrecker didn't get off lightly either, still graced with 2 shining golden cages. So we first settled down in City A, though Uncle Zhang and the others were initially reluctant. In the end, I convinced them by saying this was the place where I grew up. Moreover, both its geographical location and climate made it highly suitable as a capital city. After discussing together, the 7 of them finally agreed to make City A the capital of Zhou Kingdom. Once the entire realm was reclaimed, would officially ascend the throne as queen. When they spoke of the coronation, the 7 of them looked full of ambition, while I could only stand by with a polite smile. At that moment, I stole a glance at my crush, only to find him looking back at me with stars in his eyes, making me blush instantly. Coincidentally, the 7 regent ministers had already reached a consensus. The coronation could wait. But the matter of taking a consort could proceed right away. Proceed with it, Prince Consort. And the male god, dazed, I was dressed in a gorgeous gown, then went to Times Square with my crush, receiving blessings from millions of people in City A. Happiness came so suddenly that it wasn't until I was escorted into the bridal chamber with my crush that I jolted back to reality. I don't mind the wedding chamber, but my crush is already a zombie. Is that still okay? I sat on the edge of the bed, head bowed, fingers twisting nervously. Junji, let's go to bed. Shen Jun sat next to me. Even though he had turned into a zombie, he remained as fastidious as before. His white shirt was crisp, without a single wrinkle, and his black trousers were neat and well-pressed. His hair had been specially styled, probably with a generous amount of hair gel, slicked back like the classic big boss look from old-school dramas, no doubt. This must be the handiwork of those 7 patients in my family. Deal. I lay down on the bed, but in the next second, I suddenly sprang up. The voice of my crush didn't come from deep within my heart, but from right beside my ear. I turned to look at my crush, and he happened to be looking at me too. Don't you recognize me, Guagua? This is indeed my idol, my desk mate for 12 years, who always called me silly and gave me the nickname Guagua. You can speak, can't let you marry a mute. Can I? As he spoke, the male god rubbed my head, just like in the past when he tutored me. Sighing, I can't let you fail the college entrance exam and have no school to attend, can I? I always thought the male god was a star in the sky, far beyond my reach, but suddenly I realized he was actually within arm's reach. The male god pulled me into his embrace and sighed. You're so silly, I was planning to always watch over you from the side. But at home, something happened. I must become stronger. Wasn't it just my own wishful thinking? I still couldn't quite believe it. Does my crush like me too? My crush immediately lost his temper and playfully pinched my nose. Indeed, it's still my silly little brother, forever so naive. Do you think I've been circling around City A for nothing? Do you think a high-level zombie king like me would just lose to those 7 people around you so easily? Do you think I spent 12 years tutoring you every day, buying you snacks, carrying your backpack, and fighting off bullies just for fun? Are you feeling uneasy? Do you think I'm willing to play along with this charade and be the consort for no reason? Blushing, I lowered my head and said, then let me offer myself to you. After a moment's thought, I added, actually, it doesn't matter. As long as 2 people in love can see each other every day and stay together, that's enough. It's fine, the rest doesn't matter. I looked at my crush very sincerely and seriously. Really, I don't insist on anything else. But suddenly, my crush pressed me down. You little fool, I restrained myself because I'm the zombie king, and my body is full of viruses. In my idol's eyes, I saw restraint and tenderness. I nodded, my face blushing as if it were about to drip blood. The next day, the 7 patients who realized they'd been tricked set rules for the idol, demanding he strictly adhere to his duties as the prince consort. I watched the male lead's expression, torn between wanting to fight and trying to restrain himself, his eyes sparkling with intensity. Just 1 month into the peaceful days in City A, an urgent distress signal arrived from Western Province. A mutated giant python had been discovered in Western Province, possessing terrifying combat power. It had already wiped out several small cities, plunging the entire nation into a state of emergency readiness. After discussion, the male lead and 5 of the 7 members went to the Western Province for rescue. The 5 elemental ability users went, while the psychic and spatial ability users stayed in City A to protect me. In the apocalypse, without mutual aid and cooperation, extinction would only come faster. I waited anxiously in City A, praying daily for their safe and swift return. Finally, after a month, they returned safely. The mutated giant python was killed by the combined efforts of experts from 38 provinces and 4 cities. It is said that the battle lasted for 7 days and 7 nights, turning the surrounding area into ruins. This is only the beginning of the apocalypse, and already such powerful mutated creatures have appeared. Where is the future path for humanity, when internal troubles and external threats arose? The mutated love tree that had been confined earlier also began to riot. The mutated tree's abilities had grown significantly over the past 2 months, an increase that defied all logic. What was once easily suppressed by 7 individuals now required even the male god to join the battle, resulting in a fierce 3-hour clash. Before the mutated tree was finally subdued once more, the male lead's expression was calm, his eyes filled with solemn killing intent. Leaving them alive will bring endless trouble, let's eliminate them. The 7 were just about to nod in agreement. The mutated tree over there quickly cried out, wait, I can't wait any longer. By tomorrow, we might not even be your match. Zhang Bo's hands were already glowing with golden light, ready to strike. I surrender, I'll never resist again. I don't dare to. I have a secret, I know the cause of the apocalypse. Everyone immediately stopped what they were doing and turned their sharp gazes toward the mutated tree. To save its own life, the mutated tree had no choice but to reveal everything it knew. The mutated tree was originally an ancient 1,000-year-old tree, towering into the clouds with lush branches and leaves, so it was the first to sense the apocalypse approaching. Because I was the tallest and largest, with dense foliage, my senses were highly sensitive. When the apocalypse began, I felt an extraterrestrial meteorite falling. Driven by instinct, I swallowed that meteorite, sure enough. After swallowing this meteorite, my supernatural abilities began to surge dramatically, but the energy is too great, I can't fully absorb it. If this continues, I might explode and die. So all creatures were captured and hung up to share a portion of the energy for me. This is a win-win situation. I avoid the danger of physical explosion, while other creatures gain enhanced abilities through the energy, because I have a meteorite within me. I can sense the locations of other meteorites in the world, so I suspect this apocalypse must be related to that extraterrestrial meteorite. After finishing its explanation, the mutated tree stared at everyone eagerly, but then, the male lead heartlessly extracted the meteorite from its body. As soon as the meteorite appeared, an energy surge immediately erupted around it. Zhang Bo and his companions quickly used their 5 elements abilities to envelop the meteorite, preventing the energy from leaking out. The speculation about the mutated tree was quite reasonable. If all the meteorites could be found and the energy supply was cut off, with the apocalypse then, it's over. Thus, the male lead and 5 of the 7 decided to take the mutated tree and the meteorite to search for meteorites around the world. This journey lasted 3 years. 70-year-old Uncle Zhang stood up and briskly led me into the courtyard with energetic strides. Because we currently lack the capability to destroy them, and with the combined efforts of the entire world, all the meteorites have been sealed in a completely isolated chamber, in a confined space, without a supply of energy. The abilities of superhumans and mutated flora and fauna are gradually diminishing, the levels of zombies are gradually decreasing. A year later, all the supernatural abilities of mutants and mutated plants and animals disappeared. However, some mutations were irreversible, ultimately leaving an indelible mark on all living creatures worldwide. And when the virus within the zombies was at its weakest, scientists developed a special drug that turned the zombies back into humans. It's just a pity that those zombies with irreversible damage couldn't be saved, forever resting underground. Fortunately, the apocalypse finally ended, human order gradually restored, and life slowly improved. My crush and I, along with the other 7, began traveling the world. As long as we're together, anywhere can be home. Moreover, soon our group of 9 became 10, which we consider the world's gift of perfection to us, a massive planet located tens of billions of light-years away from Earth. This planet is 10,000 times larger than Earth. At the center of the planet lies a huge control room, where a machine is currently emitting a beeping sound. Soon, a robot arrives to inspect and forwards the report upward. A golden-eyed man received the report. 32 small planets detected and destroyed the deployed meteorites. Imperial Star Order No. 70. Redeploy meteorites to these 32 planets. Upgrade meteorite class from C to B, and double the quantity. No one can stop the Imperial Star's march to conquer the universe.